Hey y'all, and welcome back. Today we're going to be creating some elegant fall DIYs using mostly items that you can find in Dollar Tree. This is the second episode in my fall series. Make sure to check the playlist out in my description box below if you missed the previous episode. For the first project, we're using one of Dollar Tree's self-adhesive wall tiles. They have several different patterns. We're going to flip that over to the back side and also use one of Dollar Tree's pumpkin-shaped signs. This one has a metal leaf, so I did remove that, but I am going to save it and reattach it later. You'll also want to remove the hanger and then using a marker, go around and trace your pumpkin shape out. Now, if you've ever used these tiles before, you'll know that once you cut them, all the layers will come apart. We're only going to use the top layer, which is the tile portion, but you could always save the back of that to create something else later on. Now we're going to attach this to our sign, so we're just going to flip this over and flip our sign over because we're going to attach it to the back side. To do that, I'm going to use some hot glue. I decided to do the hot glue just at the top portion because I didn't want it to cool off before I could attach the entire tile piece. So once you get that set on there, you can just turn it to the side, pull it up, and then hot glue the rest of it down. That way everything was lined up and I didn't have to rush to hurry up and get the glue on there. Then I'm going to take a stiff paintbrush, go over the entire piece to make sure I remove any glue strands before painting. I'm going to use one of Dollar Tree's small sponge daubers, some white chalk paint. I'm going to dip that down into the paint and then dab it all over my paper plate to make sure that I get a nice even amount of paint on there, and then very gently go over all of the raised portions to bring out that beautiful detail on this tile. Now, you don't have to do white paint. You could do whatever color you choose. I think orange or green or brown, all of those would be very beautiful. Periodically, I do have to dab my dauber back into the paint just to get enough on it to do the next section. And if it's not dark enough with the paint, you may have to add 2 coats. This is how mine is looking after 2 coats. Now we can set it to the side and let it dry. To give it some more detail on the outside, I'm using some of Dollar Tree's nautical rope. I like to hot glue the ends to make sure they don't unravel. And then I'm going to start at the side of the stem and hot glue this around the entire pumpkin. I like to do this sections at a time just to make sure that the rope will take the shape of the pumpkin and stay in place. Using the metal leaf that came off of the pumpkin, I'm going to give this 1 coat of white chalk paint, and then once that dries, I'm going to take a pair of pliers to bend the end over to create like a little curl at the end, and then I'll push that off to the side. And I decided to take my finger sander and gently go over this to bring out some of the green that's underneath to give it more of a distressed look. I'm using some raffia that I found on Amazon, and I have that in my Amazon store. The link to that is in my description box below if you're interested, but the hula skirt from Dollar Tree will also work. I just pulled a length off. I didn't measure it. I'm just going to keep folding that over until all of it is folded. Then I'll take an extra piece of the raffia to tie in the center. Then I'll take that leaf and tie the raffia around the stem. I'm also going to add a little bit of hot glue to make sure that it stays in place. And then I'll trim the raffia down as well as cut all of those loop pieces so it kind of looks like a messy raffia bow. Then I'm going to attach that to the stem of our pumpkin, and I decided to use some of Dollar Tree's burlap trim ribbon, and I'm going to create a sweet little bow with some long tails. I'm going to tie that together with a piece of raffia and then roll the raffia ends around a paintbrush to create some curls. Then we can attach that to the center of our bow on our pumpkin, and this project is finished. We're using one of Dollar Tree's faux wood removable peel and stick wallpaper. We're also going to use one of their large wooden leaf hanging decor pieces, but you could also use a pumpkin. That would be really pretty. We're going to lay that on the back of our peel and stick wallpaper and trace it out with a marker, and then we're going to cut it. Now, it does take a little bit of time to cut it. You want to make sure you get all of those curves and edges and details, but when you're finished, it's so worth it because this is so pretty. Look how pretty that is. Now we're going to be using an 11 by 14 canvas board, but this would also look great on an actual canvas. Just my 11 by 14 canvas, the frame was not straight, so I'm going to use this canvas board. You'll want to take your time and be really careful pulling the backing off. I started at the very top and then placed that on my board and pressed it down. Then I turned it to the side so I could flip it over and remove the backing from some of the larger portions of the leaf on each side. It's just a little bit tricky because it's paper and you want to make sure that you're careful and that you don't tear it. But once you get past that larger section, it's easy to remove the backing and press this onto your canvas board. I decided to use my hair dryer on the high setting and go over it just to kind of heat that glue up, since this is removable wall tile, but it might not be a bad idea to put some Mod Podge underneath it. I also created a decal on my Cricut using the font Bickley Script Com. But if you don't have a Cricut, I do have this as a free printable on my website. All you have to do is go to the link in my description box below. It is a PDF file, so you can just download this at home, print it, and then trace it onto your project. I'm using two of these Dollar Tree decor pieces. They look like small wooden pallets. For the first one, I'm going to be using a spiced pumpkin acrylic paint and one of those brushes from Dollar Tree, and dry brush over this entire palette. So it depends on how dark you want yours. I did want some of the wood to show through, so I'm going to go over this in one direction, let that paint dry, and then I can add my second coat. So now I'm adding my second coat just to darken it up a bit, but again, it just depends on how dark you want yours. For the other palette, I'm going to use an acrylic paint in the color Celery Green, and I'm going to do that in the exact same way. Now that the paint is dry, we're going to embellish these. I'm going to use some burlap trim from Dollar Tree on the green one, and I'm going to place that at the top and the bottom. And I found that it was easier if you place a little bit of glue, let that set so you can pull this ribbon really tightly on each side. Then I can flip that over to the back side and glue those four pieces down. I measured about 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom. Look how pretty that is. Now for the orange one, we're going to take some twine and again measure from 1 inch from the top, and I'm going to wrap that around the top about 4 times, tack that down with some glue on the back, and do the exact same thing at the bottom. I'm trying to make sure that I keep the twine as straight as possible, and then I will add a little bit more glue in the back just to make sure it stays in place. During the fall season, you can usually find these wood stems at Dollar Tree. I'm going to hot glue one to the top of each of these pieces, but if you can't find them, you could always use a branch out of your yard. I found this beautiful metal pumpkin that has a grateful tag on it for $1 at Dollar General, and the metal leaf that says Hello Fall. I thought these would be perfect to add around the stem on each of our pumpkins. Now I did want to hot glue the tag down to make sure it stayed in place, and if you need to adjust the height on it, you can just pull the hanger on the back and hot glue that. I think this metal color is absolutely gorgeous on these two pieces. For this project, we're using a pallet sign from Dollar Tree's Plus section for $3 and a stencil from Hobby Lobby. This is a pack of two. One has a pumpkin and the other one has some leaves on it. I'm going to use some painter's tape to make sure that my stencil stays in place and use a white acrylic paint and a sponge dauber to apply the paint to the stencil. Now in some of those thin areas where the ribs of the pumpkin are, you do have to hold those down just to make sure that you don't get any paint underneath that. Also, during the fall season, Dollar Tree carries these wood word cutouts. They match perfectly with the color of our palette. So now that the paint is dry on our pumpkin, we can just hot glue this right to the center of our sign and you have a gorgeous piece for less than $5. I hope you enjoyed today's projects and found tons of inspiration. If you have a favorite, please let me know in the comment section down below. I always love to know which one is your favorite. If you would like some more fall inspiration, don't forget to check out my fall series playlist. The link to that's in my description box below. And if you haven't subscribed already, I would love for you to click that subscribe button right below the video. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I'll see you guys next time.